Thank you, Randy and Kathy, for having me here. So, September 11th, 2001, 8:45 a.m. I bet all of you here can remember exactly where you were and exactly what you were doing. That's a date that we all will remember and recall and realize that something happened in our lives personally and affected our country and our world dramatically. When we look back at that date, we look at what life was like before and what life is like now after. On that date, we were forced to take action in shaping the unseen. I tell you that date, and I bring that up because I think it's important to relate, and we all can relate on that date. But what I want to share with you is a date of my own. June 26, 2004. Now my family, we have a lake house up here at Lake Gaston, and so it's an honor for me to be here at Lizard Creek because this is home away from home for me. I'm from Raleigh, but spent a lot of my summers up here on the water, wakeboarding and skiing with friends and family. And on that date specifically, June 26, 2004, we were on the water just like any other day wakeboarding. We were finishing up a typical Saturday. I was 13 years old. Dropped a friend off at his dock about 5 docks down from mine. When we pulled off away from his dock, I began to tidy up the boat like I do, putting away life jackets and pulling in the rope. With a wakeboard boat, I'm sure many of you are familiar with wakeboard boats and how there's a tower on them and the rope connects to the tower. Well, with the rope being connected to the tower and having pushed off of our friend's dock and just with the boat and gear to putt down to our dock 5 docks away, I looked back and I noticed that the rope had drifted underneath the boat. And this happens sometimes, unfortunately, when you're not really paying attention and being a little bit careless. And in this situation, I had about 2 loops over my arm, using that technique that we use to create a perfect circle, over the thumb, under the elbow, that you do with an extension cord or anything like that. After seeing those 2 loops around my arm, I looked back and noticed the rope had drifted underneath the boat. Immediately when I told my dad, and he went to cut off the motor, the propeller caught the rope. And when it caught the rope, it caused it to tighten and cinch down around my arm. In doing so, it cinched down around my bicep and tricep, down to the bone. Now, I was 13 years old, was looking forward to dinner in a couple hours, and this happens. In this moment, I can remember like it was yesterday, it didn't seem real. I recall my mom screaming, yelling, "Call 911," and I didn't feel pain. Nothing hurt. So to me, it was like, what's going on? What's happening? All I remember is my arm was just hanging, and I couldn't lift it up. And to not get too graphic or specific, as soon as my dad walked over from turning off the motor, when he unwound the rope from my arm, is when I realized something very bad had happened. A lot of blood started to spray, and he immediately ripped off his shirt and wrapped it around my arm to create a tourniquet. Had he not done so, I would have bled out in about 5 minutes. But I remember as we pull into our dock, asking my dad, or telling my dad, said, "Dad, take me into the house. Take me up to my room. This is just a dream. This is a nightmare. If you show me my bed, I'll wake up, and we'll go about our weekend here at the lake like any other weekend." As he carried me up the dock and into the house, I began to realize the reality of this situation. When I began to realize the reality of the situation, my brain began to process the potential outcomes. We had no idea. I had no idea what the severity of this accident was at the time. But because that it was an accident that required immediate emergency support, I knew that there could be a big consequence. Now, I get put into the ambulance. The ambulance comes to our house and picks me up, and my mom gets in the ambulance with me. And on the ambulance ride to the local community hospital here in Virginia, I remember contemplating, thinking about the potential outcomes, and I remember asking my mom, I said, "Mom, what if I lose my arm?" She looked at me without a pause, and without a doubt, told me, Logan, it's just an arm. In that moment, I didn't realize it then, but looking back, that was the most profound, impactful statement that my mom could have made to me for my perception of what would soon be my recovery of the loss of my arm. I got to the local community hospital. They wheeled me in from the ambulance. They quickly realized, okay, this is level 1 trauma. There's not much we can do. We need to call UNC. We need to call Duke. Who can get here faster? UNC says, we have a helicopter in the air. Put him back in the ambulance. Go out to these coordinates. We'll pick him up. Get back in the ambulance. Go out these coordinates. Coming out on the stretcher. See this really cool looking helicopter coming down to land. I'm like, that thing's for me? This is awesome. I mean, it was kind of taking it all in, making the best of the situation. So I was pretty excited to ride in a helicopter. So I get put into the Tar Heel 1. We've flown back to UNC Children's Hospital, where I'm immediately overwhelmed by doctors, nurses, and everyone asking me all these questions. Parents are racing down the road trying to get back there. They immediately bring me into surgery, take an artery out of my leg, put it into my arm to regain the blood flow. Because from the accident and the way the rope cinched down, I mean, it was truly, everything was severed down to the bone. So the first thing they wanted to do is gain blood flow in order to give blood to the muscles. Because you have this 6 to 7 hour window of opportunity for your muscles to accept blood again after they've been cut off from circulation. So we put the artery in there, had blood flow, arms swelled up like a balloon. It was very swollen. A couple days went by and we were very hopeful, praying a lot, hoping for the best, that the muscles would accept this blood flow and I could start my long road to recovery of my arm. Well, after a few days, the doctors approached my parents and said, we'd like to go in for another surgery and just check out what's going on with that arm. We don't really see much happening. The blood isn't being pumped out, so let's go see what's going on. They bring me in there in the surgery and quickly realize that the muscles are dead. They didn't accept the blood. We had been about in that 8th or 9th hour, so we just missed that window of opportunity. They take me back out of the operating room and bring me back to consciousness, and as I wake up, I see my mom, my dad, and my brother bawling, crying, and the doctor standing there. And as they cry, the doctor, with tears rolling down his face as well, he was like family to us, tells me, Logan, we're going to have to amputate your left arm. Now, the previous question I had asked my mother in the ambulance was about the only time we really considered that I might lose my arm. We didn't discuss it throughout those couple days, hoping that the blood would accept, the muscles would accept the blood. We didn't discuss it. But in that moment, when I was told this information, I didn't cry. And it wasn't because I was numb to the idea of losing my arm, but I didn't cry because at that point, my mom's profound statement that it's just an arm, my immediate thought, truthfully, I can remember this like it was yesterday, the first thing I thought about, how am I going to play lacrosse? How am I going to do this? It's a very two-arm dominant sport, something I was very passionate about, played my whole life. How am I going to do that? And then I began to think about, what am I going to do to gain the dexterity in my right hand? Because here's the thing, I was left-handed. So I had to relearn how to write. I was going to have to relearn a lot of things, simple things. Now, this leads me into an experience that I had that was very enlightening throughout this journey of mine. While being in the hospital at this same moment, when I was 13, tons of friends and family coming to visit me, so sorry for me. The message that I continue to receive was everyone being so sorry and feeling so bad for Logan. Logan, it'll be okay. And what I started to notice is that people were already starting to treat me a little bit differently. So I had to make sure when people came to visit me to have a lot of energy and to make sure they knew I was the same Logan as I was before. What I feared the most, and this was a huge fear of mine, was that people were going to deem me disabled and handicapped because of the loss of a limb. I wanted to make sure my friends and family knew that I was the same Logan. Logan was going to do the same thing that he did before. And now I want to tell you about a specific example. I had friends and family and teachers from my school coming in to visit me. And the doctors and my teachers actually told my parents that, Logan, he might not be able to write for a very long time, if ever. which to me was just so silly. I couldn't believe that this was their expectation of me. But this is what they said. So what did I do? I immediately started writing in the hospital. Started trying to write the alphabet. It looked like chicken scratch, but I had to try. They told me, you said, we'll have note takers for Logan. We'll have a laptop for him in school. Everything will be okay. We'll accommodate everything that we can to. And when you're 13 years old and teachers tell you that, you're like, all right, I can just sit back and do nothing in class. This will be nice. But the first day of class, I quickly realized that this was, my biggest fear was going to come true now. I was being treated differently because I was being seen as limited or incapable of doing these things on my own. So after about a month, I told the note takers to quit taking notes. Put away the laptop, started writing. Started writing every day and night. I would leave school, go home, and just write. Just write how I was feeling. Just write anything and everything. Practice, practice, practice. 6 months into it, writing completely fine with my right hand. Now to this day, I write way better with my right hand than I did with my left. And I tell you this because it was an eye-opening experience on what expectations can do to someone. I've spent many years speaking and researching expectations and their impact on people, and I've come up with sort of my own definition of expectations. And I think they're prejudgments that we place on ourselves and one another that can typically limit potential. Think about that. Since when? I mean, we have expectations every day in our life. We expect how the traffic's going to be. We expect what we're going to have to do at work. We expect what the weather's going to be like. These are expectations. But now apply this definition and how we put expectations on others and how we expect them to perform or how we expect them to be on time or expect them to do this task at this time. We're prejudging them and we're setting a standard that could typically limit their true human potential. Now, for me, it was a big mindset shift, and expectations that were placed on me, I didn't want to achieve them. I had to exceed them because of my fear for being deemed handicapped or disabled. So I had to do more. I had to make sure. And it wasn't necessarily to prove others wrong or say, no, you weren't right about me, I can do more than that. But it was so much more for myself as well. I had much bigger goals. I wanted to play lacrosse again. I wanted to continue to wakeboard. I wanted to be involved in athletics. And to do all these things, I knew that I was going to have to give 110% every day, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, and show that to others so they realized Logan is the same as he was before. Now, having these expectations are very important for yourself. I think it's important to set expectations for yourself, but understand the impact that others' expectations can have on you. Michael Jordan once said, if we accept the expectations of others, especially negative ones, then we never change the outcome. We must apply this mindset of doing more. And it's not because we want to be perfectionists or overachievers, but it's the idea that if we do more, if we go beyond what is expected, more than the standard, we will further ourselves in the process of accomplishing our dreams, our goals, overcoming our challenges or obstacles. And this is in life in any way that you approach. The power of encouragement and confidence is truly critical so that you can pursue your dreams. I think it's important. Everybody has a dream. And the time for wishing is in the past, and it's the time for doing is now. And by focusing on doing more than what's expected, you can accomplish that. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how that mindset might be able to become a part of your life. And I have a simple message to share, and it's the power of attitude. Our attitude is how we live our life at the most simplest form. Your attitude is the way you wake up and the way you go to bed every day, and your behavior that happens throughout the day. How you're perceived by others, the feeling and the vibes that you give off to others is all based on your attitude. Now, any situation that occurs in life, whether good or bad, it's all about our perception, whether it is one of those two things. A horrible event can be perceived as a great opportunity if seen with the right attitude. So this is what I like to talk about a lot, and I think shaping the unseen is extremely relative and impactful for the message that I've tried to share over the many years of exceeding expectations and having a positive attitude. You know, my example, I tell you this in my story, not to impress you, but to impress upon you that no matter what challenge occurs, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, with the right approach, the proper mindset, the right support and encouragement from others, anything is possible. Impossible becomes I'm possible when you have this approach. Now, I think there's something important to look at too when I talk about these dates. And I told you about September 11th, and I told you about my date. Now, Ralph Emerson once said, "What lies before you and what lies behind you pales in significance when compared to what lies within you." One thing that I don't think we appreciate enough is human potential. There are, over the course of 11 years as an amputee and being involved with communities, there are incredible individuals, thousands, millions of incredible individuals accomplishing tasks and defying the odds, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's truly unbelievable and inspirational to me. And it's a testimony to human potential never being tapped. It's always untapped. There's always more. It's endless. And by looking at an event that happens in our lives and not saying, "Man, things sure were great before that," or "Man, this is tough now after that event sure did change everything." That's okay. That's okay if that event did. But what I encourage and what I challenge you to do in life is to, instead of saying, "Wow, things were different before," or "Look at what it's like now," think about what we can do in this moment to make an impact and to change. If that means putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's the message I like to share. We can grow as humans the more we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. It allows us to learn and be educated more and really find out who we are. Throughout my life, I've lived by that, and I'm always seeking more human potential in myself and to help others. That's why I'm here today on this stage sharing my message. And I hope it motivates you to go help others go beyond expectations, because if so, I guarantee your dreams will come true. Thank you so much.